This is Still Here, Still Queer Now What, your companion to queer midlife. I'm Dr. Paul Taylor-Pitt. I'm the author of Still Here, Still Queer Now What, the book, coming everywhere 21st of October. My guest on the podcast today will be familiar if you were a listener to season 1, or if you came to one of our Soho House Midlife Queers events way back in the mists of time in 2024. Lior Locher has agreed very kindly to come back on the podcast for a bit of an update. What I love about these returning guest interviews is that we get to do a little bit of a comparison about, where were you a year ago when you last came on the podcast? Where were you 2 years ago when we were doing the Soho House interviews? Where were you 3 years ago when we first talked for my book? And what I love about Lior is they turn up every time, consistently brilliant, but always different. I feel like Lior is someone who really does prove that you never stop reinventing yourself, particularly when you have courage to place yourself in what I would describe as really nerve-wracking situations. So Lior is always a joy to be with. I feel like I need to go back and listen to the episode several times because there's so many great things that they talk about. So please sit back. As always, I ask my guests to introduce themselves, and here is Lior. As people are listening or watching, how are they meeting you today? If they were to be meeting you for the first time right now, who are they meeting?
Ooh, starting with a little easy warm-up, right? Who are they meeting?
It's a different way of saying, like, what's your name?
So my name is Lior, I think. That is still up for debate. The bureaucratic cluster F around that has not gotten easier. So my legal name
Really?
is still not Lior. My name I'm living under is and will remain Lior. I'm not going to do the full bureaucratic sideline because that will literally put people to sleep. But speaking of queerness and figuring out what one's name is and different regulations in different countries, it's just genuinely impossible. So I think I might just, for a mix of convenience, safety, and also trying to be truthful to myself, that seems for the moment to be the most workable compromise. So I am
People in
Lior.
this country change their names to things like, bag fuck face, and they get away with it. And they think it's really funny, or they'll change their name to, like, Britney Spears, and no one cares. And I guess usually, and when I say they, I'm usually talking about straight cis people. Why is this being so problematic for something that should really just be a bit of admin?
Because if you're a German citizen, you don't legally own your own name. Your name actually belongs to the government. Yes, I do not legally own my own name, which I find outrageous. I'm like bloody well old enough. Like I own everything else, including, all the stuff I mess up. I could run for president, which Germany doesn't have, but like I could run for office. I can start companies and crash them against the wall. I can, do everything, and I do not own my own name. Anyway.
So now blow my mind, as you always do. So the German government owns your name.
And they get to decide what I'm allowed to do with it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? So, okay, I mean, I never realized that was a
Sorry.
thing. So no, it's great because it's a bit like the question of what does a duck say where you come from? Like everyone has a different answer, which is
Yes.
wild.
So if people ask me where I come from, I say Margate because that's where I live. And that's what home is. Like a lot of people with diverse backgrounds, they usually then follow up with, but where are you from? And the from bit annoys me enormously. There is a TEDx that conveniently reframed it into where are you a local? And I think that's really the interesting question to ask. So I am very much a local to Margate. I'm still convincingly a local to London because I spend a lot of time there still.
Yeah.
I'm probably still a good, honorable local in a couple of other locations that I've lived in and that I have cultural connections to. And that makes the most sense. So if people ask me, I say Margate because that's home. And that is new. I mean, not not that new. But when we were talking last time, I was talking about, hoping to find more community and build all of that. And I did listen back to the thing and hoping to go out more and all of that. And I can happily report back that has happened and is happening and is fantastic. So I have not only one community, I have several and they're all amazing. And as I'm looking at my wrist, I see the remnants of 2 overlapping stamps from club entries from last weekend. And that is amazing. That's exactly how it should be.
I mean, I'm lucky if I get 1 stamp, maybe on a bank holiday, never mind 2 stamps in an ordinary weekend. That's impressive. It's something that came up in a lot of the conversations I had with people for the book, the feeling of the difficulty of finding community in midlife, feeling more pushed aside or on the fringes of community. And yet it sounds like you've just gone, no, this is what I'm looking for and I'm going to make it happen. For people who are finding it more difficult, what tips would you give them about creating community?
Oh, loads. I think I've learned a lot in the last few years. The quicker you say goodbye to what you think cool looked like when you were 18, the better, because nobody gives a shit. And the people who peaked at age 18 are not people you want to be friends with anyway. So, fuck that basically. Do whatever you like, and just don't care about if people think it's cool. For example, I have a knitting group. Is that cool? I don't know. I don't care. They're amazing.
I think it is. Yeah.
And I happen to be able to knit because I got taught by my mom, by my grandma at a really young age, and I'm still knitting. So that's what I'm doing. And they're fabulous. And yes, sometimes we knit in a club because it's Margate and that's a thing. And I also found the more honest I am with myself and trying to not desperately try and be cool also helps with that. Who I am, who I want to be next, I think that's the more interesting bit. So plan forward, plan who you want to be next, and then find the community with that. And the more honest and feral and vulnerable I am with that, the easier it is to find the right people. So I started doing open mic stuff, for example, and that was sort of fairly embryonic and new last time we've spoken, and I now do probably 2 to 3 a month, and I'm really pushing it. I'm creating new material every time, pretty much, so that's really a thing now. And so that's an interest I want to develop, and then I hang out where people are who have that same interest. And that's really of all walks of life. And I think that's amazing. And this is now turning into a community that I'm very much a part of. And that's a super supportive network. And a lot of people there are midlife too. Not all of them. And it doesn't have to be, it's not. And that's been amazing. So really planning my life forward instead of backward. And it doesn't need to be clear or fully formed yet. It could have been, I could have done a few open mics and not liked it and find it horrifying and never gone back. And then I would have found something else and done something else and met different people, fine. Like, it's not like a lifetime thing. So you can just try it out. My recommendation is also try it more than once. So give it at least 3 good solid tries to get over the initial awkwardness. And then you'll probably find some people who are quite nice and quite all right. Then you hang out with them for a little.
So my initial question came from the things I had heard other people say. But as I'm hearing you, I'm thinking how much of it actually is a question I want to ask, which is how do I get over the awkwardness of showing up somewhere, not knowing anyone, and then having to small talk my way in, which I just find it so hard.
You just do it scared and awkward. You literally walk up to someone and you say, I'm here for the first time. This sounds really interesting. I don't know anybody and I don't know what to do. Hi, my name is Lior. Something like that. It's fine.
That sounds so easy. Like it really sounds so easy.
It's awkward. It's cringe as fuck, but it works. Like if that's where you are, then just arrive like that. What else are you going to do? Like.
So, and again, I feel like my when I hear you every time, my head just kind of melts a bit. And then, like, just I look in the soup of it and I go, oh, yeah, I can throw that away. I can throw that away. Because when you started talking about, give up any pretense of being cool, I was thinking, well, I just don't think I'm cool at all. I've never thought I'm cool. And yet I must, on some level, still be holding on to some aspiration of coolness, because I would walk into that space of not knowing anyone and just be standing there, just be like, yeah, someone can come and talk to me. They can make conversation with me. And then it won't happen. And then I'll be standing there going, well, now this is a bit shit. Rather than doing what you did, which is the opposite of that, and just going, hello, like even the way you said it, I feel like I need to print it out and take it and read it and go, just insert my name at the end, because there's something so inviting about that, so easy about that. It's now making me want to go back to all of the conversations I had with people who said, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do this, and ask them, and what have you tried? Because if someone asked me that, I would say, nothing. I've turned up and I've stood there and I've tried to look cool and fuck all has happened, so I've left and never gone back.
I also find even like what I just said is sort of the basic minimum, just live the cringe as it is in the moment. And if you have extra levels of courage, it actually makes it easier. So for example, on the open mic stuff, don't just go to listen, sign up for a slot. The beauty is you've then already introduced yourself with a mic fully amplified to the entire room, so you don't need to do that again. And you already have something to talk about. That bit is a bit more brutal, so that might not be kind of what you do first if you've never done anything else, but it actually works really well.
What do you perform at the open mic spaces?
Depends on which night I'm going to and what the scope and the format of the night is. So I create something new pretty much every time. That could be something, one night is called Writing in Progress, where it could literally be I read 3 paragraphs from a half-finished short story, and that's sort of the scope, and that's fine. So that one's less about the performative element and more about the writing. There is one that's drag/drag adjacent. So I've done things that go with that. I have started singing where it's appropriate, and sometimes just kind of done it anyways. And sometimes it's more spoken word, poetry. There's one session that has a live band that improvises, and then you can either read poetry. And because last time I only had a short poem and nothing else, I decided to just improvise and vibe and freely associate, which worked surprisingly well. So I might do that again. The singing is actually brilliant. I thought it was going to be scarier than talking, but it's not. So another thing I realized, #menopause, the voice for female-bodied, whatever people haunted by a female hormone system, drops a tiny bit in menopause. I always had a fairly deep or fairly big range, but now I actually have a full tenor range, which is amazing. So what I'm singing is Pavarotti arias, and I do song mashups with pop songs, which doesn't sound like it should work, but it actually does. And the beauty is with singing, because singing is obviously breath control, it's almost impossible to be nervous because you force your breath into a rhythm and that stabilizes everything else. So singing is actually way easier than talking.
I have a hunch about you, and I want to test it out to see what you think, because I think you are secretly a scientist in an artist's body.
Yes, yes.
And maybe not even secretly. I think you just are. Like, there's something in the way that you describe those things, which on one hand, as an observer from the outside in, I'd be looking at this person who's showing up and improvising poetry and singing, and I'd go, artist. And yet when you talk about it from the inside out, what I hear is scientist. There's something there about breath control. There's something there about what you understand about interpersonal relationships, about vulnerability, like that. It's both. I don't think it's either or. It's not one at the expense of the other. I just think what I find so fascinating about when we talk is that I go away understanding stuff better, because I feel like you understand it. Would that be fair?
I think that's totally fair. I usually say I have a McKinsey brain on an artist's rest, like body and mind, but kind of, yes, yes.
I mean, McKinsey Consulting or McKinsey, the sex
Well, I mean,
explorer.
could be either really, but initially more McKinsey, the consulting, although the other part we can maybe get to relationships later. But anyways, so yeah, no, that totally resonates. I think it's beautiful because I think whatever faculties you have available, use it to the maximum and make the most of it. And that's what I always try. It is really difficult to try and fit in because people usually want you to be one or the other and usually don't fully understand the full range. So I often find when I meet people, they get about 30% of me and the rest goes literally way over their head, or they find it terrifying, or any other thing. And that is really hard because, speaking of finding community, I find it really easy to find community, but it's always with a segment. So I kept joking, like, as far as one can joke about one's own funeral, but, like if people ever all come together, they would probably think they've gate crashed 5 different parties of somebody they never met.
Because you keep your people separate.
Not intentionally, but it's just some people wouldn't, they wouldn't get along. They wouldn't find it interesting because I have so many different things I'm doing and different things I'm interested in. I mean, I'm not, it's all like, there's only one Lior Locher. You can Google, like, all Google pages are me. Like, if someone did it, it was probably me, with that name. So,
Yeah.
not a secret, but yeah, not everyone gets it.
I don't want to be scathing of heteronormative cisgender frameworks. Of course I do. But
We can be scathing together. That's fine.
because some of my best friends are straight people in those spaces, and I don't want this to be about them. I guess I'm talking about the people who I look at and go, no, I will never be your friend. Because I think their funerals are the ones when people show up and they know everyone in the room. Because all they've ever done is hang out together, and all they've ever known is everything about this person. And they will have so much in common, probably because they live in the same place they grew up, and their kids are friends with each other, and maybe even their grandkids are friends with each other, and they're going on holiday with their families. Good for them. I'm not coming for them. I think in the spaces that we occupy, where we're not relying on those traditional inbuilt structures, we get the opportunity to go, oh yeah, I'll go and be with my knitting people for a while. Oh yeah, I'll go and be with my performance art people for a while. Oh, I'll go and be with my work colleagues for a while. And they might be all completely different people. And so I feel like, again, theory, not proven, unless you are living where you grew up and with the people that you grew up with, no one ever sees the whole of you. Or maybe very few people, maybe like a sprinkling, 1 or 2 people at most. And everyone else will be surprised at who turns up to our funerals.
I think that's true. I remember one of the last conversations with my mom where I tried to explain to her who I am. I don't think she fully got it, and we're obviously not talking and so on. But because she's very much one of the, not moving around much, fairly clear circles and so on. And then she moved when she got married and then just built a new circle in the image of the old circle, like it's a new circle, but it's really, really the old circle. She just swapped out a few people. And I think society probably needs a lot of, like farmers who are rooted to the land and who do all the things, and they do that one thing and they do it 150 times and they get really good at it and they like it and they're happy, and that's great. You need that. I mean, quite a lot of them probably, because otherwise stuff doesn't really hold together. And then you need a few people who are like, oh, there's a hill over there. I wonder what's on the other side. I wonder what it looks like when you're on top of that hill. Or, oh, there's an ocean. I wonder what's on the other side. How cold is the water? Can I swim? Like that sort of person. And I think I've just always been that person. And I think society needs it. Probably not a whole society full of people like that, because otherwise it would possibly kind of be a bit chaotic as well. But I think there is value in that.
Like being on the edge of the bell curve.
Yes. Even not being, I just looked at the tetralemma again, which I did my TEDx about, even sort of the point that's outside the framework that questions the whole premise of the framework, and the question you came in with. I think that's needed. I totally get how that's probably annoying for everyone else who's in the framework and doesn't enjoy being rattled like that, or hope, you'll rattle for a bit and then go away and not come back. Gosh, like,
Yeah, because at that point you'll have gone, oh, look over there, I'm going out to explore that mountain.
But I do think it's necessary. I do think that is a valid role to be having, and I wish that role was seen for what it is and what it brings.
It's reminding me of, I just listened to Victoria Wood's biography, which I listened to it because it's read by, different chapters are read by people who were important to her in her life. So it feels very personal. And, obviously it was written after she died. So there's a little bit of kind of looking back on who she was. And then I went down a bit of a rabbit hole and ended up watching lots of YouTube videos of her and interviews. And there was one interview where she said that there isn't anyone else doing what she's doing. And there isn't anyone else who can do what she does. And she said, sometimes I wish there was just one person who knew everything that was going on that I could talk to. And it really resonated for me in the sense of, Dan and I talk a lot about everything. And I feel very lucky about that. And there are areas of each other's lives where we feel very like, yeah, I don't need to know about that. That's your thing. Have it. It's your space. We are not like, oh, we complete each other. It's like, no, we are both very complete. And yet there's often that it's the blessing and the curse of uniqueness, because as soon as you meet someone who is on that same place, I just go, no, I've got to go and do something else. I'm going, oh, I can't do it. Is it about belonging? What's your relationship with belonging?
Ooh, difficult, very difficult. I would love to belong. I would really, really, I have this, deep yearning to belong. I also know throughout my biography what the price of belonging would have been in different situations, and I clearly wasn't ready to pay it. So, that didn't fully happen. I think I'm getting better at finding at least a few other similar misfits, crazy people, polymaths, all wired differently, but at least we get what it's like to be wired like that and can talk on that level. And that's been really, really amazing. And those
And
are the
so,
people I meet across several communities occasionally where I'm like, hello.
yeah, like I see you. I know you. I was going to ask you anyway, but you raised it as well. So I feel like it's okay to ask. How's relationship life?
So I don't have a relationship. I'm okay-ish with that.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, it was probably, I kind of more rejected the idea because I felt like I needed to get my own life back on a more stable footing. And I think some of that is now starting to work. I'm also, which is also changed compared to, I think, last time we spoke when I was still half on crutches, half off. So as of last summer, I'm off crutches and pretty much, for all intents and purposes, able-bodied-ish. I mean, I'll probably still need knee replacement at some point, but that might also be true for other people who might just not know it yet. But like I go to the gym, I'm fitter than I've been. Like my last time, my arms were as toned as they are now. I was 19, so like I'm kind of getting properly in shape, and that is awesome. That also does help with stuff like self-confidence. I've started kind of doing more casual things, so to speak. I once heard the term dating recreationally. Maybe it's kind of that. So it's, like, yeah, I mean, none of the people would, meet my brother for a cup of tea, but, so I am active and there are people involved. I'm not sure I would want a typical relationship where, you eventually live in the same place and share a bank account and stuff like that. I am, given what happened in my life, I am fiercely protective of my finances, so that would probably not happen. That could well still be a close relationship and you plan some parts of life together and so on, but it would not be this fused, making a home together that's sort of fully shared, not like that. But I'm not looking, also because my schedule is insane with me running several lives in parallel. I'm not looking, but if somebody was to find me, I would probably put up less of a fight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there may be someone else who is looking and you're what they find.
Mhm. Like if
And so
somebody was interested, I would entertain the idea and see where it goes, if that makes sense.
how would they capture your attention?
I'm not very good if the signals are too subtle, so they would probably literally need to tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Which is
not very
fine.
good with, like, weird games and things, so, yeah, I also don't really have like, I'm all up for adult conversations and people stating their needs, and if the need is, I'd love to have a chat, can we have a cup of coffee? Then that's great, and then, like, it's not again, like, it doesn't need to be more complicated than it is, and
But would they need to signal cup of coffee with a bit of a wink, cup of coffee? Or because you cannot just have a cup of coffee with someone with utterly no hopes or expectations.
well, I
Like, would
mean
they need to just make sure that you knew it was that kind of coffee, not that?
First of all, I'd need to know they exist and that they wanted something. I mean, if they're sort of
Okay, that's a low bar.
if they're like if they're like
What are you
interesting
looking
and
for?
in my
Someone who
orbit,
exists.
yeah, that's sort of yeah. I'm
I
definitely
need them
not
to
the
be in
person.
human form.
I'm not the person to date an AI. Like hell no. No, but like also like if they're in my orbit and they're kind of a nice person, I would probably ask them myself. Like it's not again, it's not
Okay.
and it doesn't have to be clear, Like if somebody found me devastatingly attractive, could be, I don't know. But like, and it's definitely a coffee that's way more than a coffee,
Yeah.
that's great to signal that and then I can see how I feel about that. And the answer might be, I don't know, but let's have a coffee and see what happens. Like it's not,
Yeah. There was a TV show which I used to love. I can't even think. No, it must be about 25, maybe 30 years old, called Would Like to Meet. Very early reality TV, like no budget. And they would find people who were struggling with dating and they would allocate them a confidence coach, a sex coach, a style coach. And when I look back on it, like, because I've occasionally watched old episodes on YouTube, it's so carefully done. Like, it was very different to reality TV now, which is basically like, let's just punch as many people as we can. And you could tell that the coaches had real compassion and care for the people that they were working with. And so often the people would go through this incredible transformation just because someone was telling them it was okay for them to go and chat to someone in a supermarket or to compliment someone. And one of the things that I found fascinating from the confidence coach was he said, if you're trying to ask someone out, use the word sexy very deliberately. He said, because you can go up to someone and you can say, oh, hey, that shirt looks really good on you. And you think you're complimenting them, but they just go, oh, okay, thank you. Whereas if you say to them, that shirt looks really sexy on you, it's like, oh, hello. You're just subtly changing. And so it's not like you would be saying to someone, hey, should we go for a sexy coffee? But it's almost like you somehow along the way finding an opportunity to drop that in, to be like, your brain is very sexy to me. I think we should go for coffee.
kind of seen and also done basically the opposite, but that also clarifies things where it's like, people talk about either a friend date where it's clear this won't be going anywhere, that's not friendship, or
Hey,
a
a friend
friendship
date.
coffee.
So being really like labeling it as we're going on a friend date. So as well as being a scientist in an artist's body, you're also like a Gen Z person in a midlife brain. Like that to me feels like a very young person thing to do. And I'm not saying you're not young, but also equally, we're both talking about being middle-aged. That feels like a very young person thing to do. Like, let's go for a friendship coffee.
Yeah.
Do you hang around lots of young people?
Sometimes, but no, I have quite a few, like for some of the acting stuff, a lot of the people are quite a bit younger. And a lot of
What
the
do you
other
notice in
communities.
the youngsters?
Hmm?
What do you notice in the youngsters? that feels like it separates them from us, and what feels very familiar?
I think they're a lot more literate around stuff like relationships. Either I'm not sure to what extent it's always fully embodied and to what extent it's just a vernacular they've picked up from social media, but it does seem to be clearer and clearer and therefore also freer what something is and what it isn't. And people will literally say what they want and how they want it, and then at least you know. Like takes away the guessing.
Mm.
They're also way more comfortable in very niched and stratified identities, where I think for us it would have just been sort of not straight and then let's see, kind of,
Yeah.
and that's very liberating. I think they're less. I guess the downside of that is it seems to fragment into micro niches that never interact. Then every conversation is a job interview, and if you fail to make it into that community because you're not woke enough or you're like, I don't know, stratified in some way that isn't useful, then you can't be a part of that because you're not that. And I think, I don't know if that was that was an age thing or kind of my countryside upbringing where you have a limited set of people that exist and that you have to get along with because it's not like you're going to get any new ones. It's not like London where if you have 20 people and you don't like them, there's 20 others like in the countryside. There just literally is. Especially not pre-internet. And sometimes I wish there was a bit more willingness to sustain the discomfort long enough to see who else and what else is out there.
I wonder what impact the stuff that we're seeing happen around the world in Australia and some parts of Europe and the UK of banning under 16s from social media. I wonder what, if any, difference that will make in a decade's time. Like, will we have a bunch of mid-20-year-olds who have never been on social media, who don't have that vernacular, who don't have the way of interacting that the generation before them have had? Like, do you think it'll make any difference to anything?
I mean, it will make a difference, but a part of me is happy because I think social media does a lot of bad things, particularly to young brains, and there is a lot of research. I would also encourage people to occasionally hang out with a teenager and try and figure out what teenagers do when you ban something. Not be like, oh, okay, you said I can't use it. Okay, I'm not going to use it then until I'm old enough. No. I mean, point one. So it will get underground and just be even less regulated for a lot of people. Part two, what would you want to replace that with? I don't know how big the percentage of youth clubs is that got defunded, in decades of austerity and everything else. Like, unless you give people sensible, wholesome, growthful, awesome, nice things to do they can do instead that doesn't cost them money they don't have, it's just going to be even bleaker, and that's not going to be good. I was probably the last generation with a properly offline childhood. Like when I did A-levels, there were 3 people in our school that had an email address and I was one of them. So, I was pretty much still properly offline. But again, that was the countryside. You could walk around mom would chuck you out after homework and you'd come back when it got dark. That's not what people are allowed to do or what is legit a good idea depending on where people live. So unless you give people a sensible alternative, which I'm hearing nothing about, I don't think it's going to help. It'll definitely do something, like all unilateral interventions in a systemically interconnected thing, but I doubt it'll do what people think it will do because that literally never works like that. Very long rant, but
No, I love it because it's such a one-size-fits-all solution to nothing. I don't even know what the problem is that this is supposed to fix.
Again, it's the wrong way around. If you want to regulate social media companies, you know who they are, regulate them. People have been discussing for 15, why is that you know who the guys are, and yes, it's all guys. Pull them in, have a conversation with them, give them a deadline, or fucking shut them. It's not difficult. People know. They just
it's
need
power,
to
though.
Insert body parts, and the fact that youth unemployment, teen depression, but yeah, great, we're going to get the world's first trillionaire, and people think that's a cool thing. Like, no. I hope people get more conservative with age. I definitely don't.
Well, that's the thing. Some people do. Those people who are
Mhm.
in those rigid circles that have stayed the same all their lives maybe tend to get more and more conservative. Whereas outside of the circles, we're going, what are you doing in there? What do you mean your circle's getting even smaller? What's going on? I find the world constantly fascinating. And and I don't know that I certainly don't think I'm becoming more conservative. I think I'm becoming more constrained in the way that I am able to make sense of this changing world. I don't know how to act in it in some ways. I don't know how to respond to increasingly right-wing conversations. I don't know how to react to, bans on pride flags. Well, actually, I do. I just laugh. I go, really? That's it? That's your solution, is let's ban some pride flags? But I'm finding it harder to comprehend it all. Or, I don't know, maybe I'm giving myself too easy a time. Actually, I think in some ways I'm finding it very easy to comprehend, but then feeling quite powerless to do anything about it. Maybe that's the difference. I feel like I understand it. I just don't know what my power is to do anything about it. And maybe it's the same with, yeah, you know who the tech bros are, do something with them. But actually, the tech bros are the ones with all the power. It's not the politicians anymore. And so how do you reconcile that in the way that you don't own your name, the government does?
Yeah, it's been really interesting now that I am part of a community where I actually live, which is the first time possibly in my life, actually, that I have friends within walking distance and that I feel at home where I'm living. I obviously had village type structures where I grew up, but I never felt like I belonged there. And that was kind of, for various reasons, kind of fairly obvious. And I think maybe it needs to start with the local communities. Like the gallery up the road that runs after school programs for kids and, occasionally does fundraisers to be able to actually pay for it. Because they apply for grants and sometimes they get something, but most of the time they just get nothing. And, maybe that's a thing, that'll be one handful of local kids who have something. Or, the cafe that also operates here, that also operates as a hospitality skills, getting people, getting young people who kind of crashed out of the education system, give them some skills and then get them into local hospitality businesses or support them in starting their own thing. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's just, but like there is a bit in the Jewish writing. It's called the wisdom of the fathers, and it's called, and like there is a lot about tikkun olam, like repairing the world. And so kind of social, like it's a very practical social action focused way of being in the world, not, everything deferred to the afterlife. It's like, no, you're here and you make something out of this first before you get to talk about what happens afterwards. And the saying is something like, you're not expected to complete the job, in brackets, healing the world, repairing the world. Neither are you allowed to not do it, essentially. So the idea being, don't abdicate. You're one person out of 7.5 billion or wherever we are these days. So you need to make a one person sized contribution, not more. But also that is the expectation. Make a one person sized contribution. And if everybody does that, then times 7.5 billion. That seems like, honestly, that is a big enough team size. Genuinely, like you can do stuff with that.
What is your one person sized contribution looking and feeling like at the moment?
Scattered and unaligned, if I'm honest, because I'm still figuring out. I think at the moment I'm still scanning and sensing, if that makes sense, and making new friends and exploring the community side where I can. I'm starting to make contributions at the size that's currently possible. I don't have a big strategy at the moment. At some point, I'd love to be able to be a bit more focused and deliberate. At the moment, it's not it's always deliberate. It's not always focused. It could be this came up and I know that person and that seems like a good thing to do. So I'll do something with that.
Hmm.
And then there are a couple of local groups and businesses and organizations that, for example, those two, and whenever they do something and I can meaningfully do something with that, then I will. I'm also, at the moment, I'm still, if I tally everything up, it's between 100 and 120 hours a week. So there is also not that much extra time beyond that. So again, I think all the right seeds are there. There is no big bracket yet. And at some point, and I know it always, it's like breathing, it expands and contracts. At the moment, it's still expanding. At some point, I think some things will clarify and will be a bit more focused. Again, not forever, but for the moment. But that's not where things are right now. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
I love it. I love the answer because I feel like you're living a life of inquiry.
Yeah.
And curiosity, and which makes me feel like actually maybe you've already given more than your one person contribution. Maybe you've already gone above 100%. And so now whatever happens is just a bonus. Because if you were to average it out, there are some people who give 0% of a contribution. And maybe you've already given their share as well. Just by existing in the way you do and by challenging things the way you do and questioning things and creating things. And, I feel like every time we have a conversation, I go away feeling more informed and empowered. And maybe you've already given your share. And so the rest of the time is just for the fun of it.
That is so sweet. And I would still love to make a bigger splash in a more focused way. So at some point, I'd love to have, some actual money and a foundation and, put a pin in, stick a lever into the universe and give it a good, whack in a more way. So if I can make that happen at some point, I will. And in the meantime, again, it's not an excuse to not do anything. Find a local soup kit. Like there is a local soup kitchen here, every time, first of the month, give them 20 quid. That probably won't kill you and it'll help them. Like, if a local person does a fundraiser for top surgery or, any of these things, maybe throw a few quid in. Like, you don't need a strategy for that. You just need to do it when you see it happening.
Reminder. It's also making me think about, so many things. I don't know that I have that many friends in walking distance. They're probably all in commuting distance. They're like a bus journey away or a train ride away, but certainly not within walking distance. But then I thought, actually, the London LGBTQ Centre is within walking distance, and I've never been inside it. And now I'm thinking, why not? Why am I not just walking in and saying, hello, how can I be of use? Because that is within walking distance. And maybe it's just walking in once a month and giving them 20 quid. Or maybe it's about walking in and saying, I'm part of this community. What can we do together? And that's what you give. That for me is what I get every time I see you, is a bit of a gentle nudge into just being a bit better, being a bit more myself. Because I see that in you each time I see you. You have moved a bit closer to yourself, come home to yourself more. If we were to talk again in another year's time, what would you like to be telling me then?
Continue stabilizing my life, the rebuilding stuff. I feel like I've made good progress on the body, on some of the where and how I'm living, on the community side. So keep building on that. I'd love to be further ahead with my creative writing and performing. So, possibly also perform in London and have, like the customary type 10 comedy set, like that sort of stuff. There's a lot of I could take the easy way out and just rattle off things that I know are already in the calendar, so I can so I can then be like, yes. So I
Did
know there
that?
will
Yeah,
be
did
art
that.
exhibition, so I can say I would have loved to have an art exhibition, but I know that's already planned, so I feel like that's cheating. But just
It's not cheating.
keep at it and keep finding a balance of the day to day and flourishing and keeping myself going with pushing ahead in my many different lives to make them all happen and Yeah, and just keep being open for what wants to happen.
I'm such an idiot because when you were talking about like the open mic and the spoken word stuff, and I was thinking, oh, actually, I would love to do that. And now you've given me the script where I can walk in and go, hey, I'm weird and awkward, and hello, I'm Paul. And then just in that moment, as you were saying that, I thought, or I could just say to you, should we go together?
Yeah. Yes.
Why am I making it so hard for myself to suddenly imagine like, oh, I've got to go in on my own? And you've just told me that you're doing these things. What's stopping me from just saying, oh, do you know what? That would be really good fun if we went to one together. So if you're up for it, I would love to go to one together.
Yes, definitely. That sounds like a deal.
Maybe this is the purpose of this podcast, is it's going to give me a different kind of social life. And so the job is done.
I'll be the crazy creative parole officer. Wait till you see that uniform.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. And if it doesn't exist, you need to create it. The question that I ask everyone, finish the sentence. I'm still here. I'm still queer. And
I'm only starting.
yes to that. If you want people to find your stuff, find you, where should they go?
Well, I actually created an overview page online with all my different strands. So if people
Oh,
go
amazing.
on liorlocher.me, that's sort of the portal into everything else. LinkedIn has the day job stuff. Instagram, all Lior Locher has, Instagram has the art and the performing art stuff. There's also clips on YouTube at Lior Locher Performs. So if people want to see what I've been up to or want to hear me sing or any of the other things, that's all there. I also have 2 books. One is about decision making based on your values. That is on Amazon. And the other one is about rebuilding one's life. And that is also on Amazon. So if you look for Lior Locher, that should all come up as well.
That's the wonderful thing about being singularly you, that people can just type your name and they will find all of those things. And if they're lazy, I'll put the link into the show notes.
Sounds good.
Thank you again for coming back. Let's have a night out and then let's get you back on the podcast afterwards. We can talk about how it went.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Lior.